revealed that Hunter Biden believed that, quote, all this stuff, meaning his legal troubles, would all go away when his dad became president. Why did he believe that? Because for years, the Biden family has personally benefited from Joe Biden's position of power. Joe Biden knew this, he did nothing to stop it, and he lied about it. I yield to Jim Jordan. Chairman Jordan.
I thank the gentleman. Who planted the pipe bombs on January 6? Nobody seems to know. Who leaked the Dobbs draft opinion? You know, the leak that led to an assassination attempt on Justice Kavanaugh. How about this one? Who left cocaine at the White House? Biden administration doesn't seem to have time to answer these questions. They're too busy investigating parents at school board meetings, labeling Catholics extremists, retaliating against whistleblowers. They're too busy putting together a sweetheart deal for Hunter Biden, a deal that got laughed out of court. And oh, the guy who put together the deal that got laughed out of court, that's the guy they name special counsel. You know what Democrats do have time for? Going after President Trump. They've been doing it for 8 years. They spied on his campaign, then it was the Mueller investigation, 19 lawyers, 40 agents, $30 million, and found nothing. Then it was impeachment, then it was raid his home, then it was a special counsel, then it was the 14th Amendment. The party of democracy said, we're going to keep the guy off the ballot who's leading in every single poll. The ranking member said that President Trump should be disqualified from even running for office. Thank goodness we have a Supreme Court who disagreed with the ranking member and the Democrats. 9-0. Not 5-4, not 6-3, not 7-2, not 8-1, 9-0. They disagreed. Now Democrats say, how dare Republicans investigate Joe Biden? How dare they look into the money, the business, and the brand? Millions of dollars, as the chairman said, millions of dollars from foreign entities run through 20 different companies for what? 20 different companies for what? Devin Archer told us what it was for. Access to the brand. And the brand was Joe Biden. The brand that played rounds of golf, took calls and meetings, attended lunches and dinners with Hunter Biden and his business partners. The brand that said, the brand that conditioned $1 billion of American tax money on the firing of the prosecutor pressuring the company Hunter Biden sat on the board of. And oh, by the way, was getting paid $1 million a year. Today, we're going to learn more about that brand. We're going to learn more about what Mr. Galanis called the Biden lift. We'll learn about the plausible deniability that Jim Biden talked to Mr. Bobulinski about. And we'll hear about the statement, the rule that governed how the business operated around Joe Biden. The rule that said, say it, forget it, write it, regret it. So I want to thank our witnesses for coming here today. They, like the whistleblowers who came to the Ways and Means Committee, are doing it simply because they want the American people to have the truth. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the ranking member for 12 minutes for his opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very kindly. With any luck, today marks the end of perhaps the most spectacular failure in the history of congressional investigations, the effort to find a high crime or misdemeanor committed by Joe Biden and then to impeach him for it. In prior hilarious episodes of this long-running madcap series, America got to see the following. 1, nearly 20 fact witnesses who could not identify a single act of wrongdoing by President Biden, much less a high crime and misdemeanor, and who overwhelmingly testified that Biden was not involved in any of his family's business adventures. 2, 3 expert witnesses called by the majority itself who said nothing that they had seen in the tens of thousands of pages of documents adduced by the majority even remotely approached the level of a high crime and misdemeanor. Bank records which show exactly what all the witnesses told us, that Joe Biden was not involved in his family members' businesses. Repeated voyeuristic displays of pornographic images by the majority, completely irrelevant to any conceivable legislative or investigative purpose. A star witness, Gal Luft, who turned out to be a Chinese agent and an illegal arms trafficker on the run from American justice, And the key piece of evidence, which launched the entire zany goose chase, an FD 1023 form in which the FBI duly recorded a completely fictional tip about a $5 million bribe to Vice President Biden, peddled by Alex Smirnoff, who has been criminally indicted by a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney, Special Counsel David Weiss, for felony counts of systematically lying to the FBI and constructing a false record about Joe Biden, and now sits in jail in California as a flight risk while the world studies his longstanding and extensive ties to Russian intelligence. Today, the good chairman and his ace MAGA detectives have finally jumped the shark. The comedy of errors comes crashing to an end as House Republicans in more than a dozen Biden districts beg for mercy, and the committee throws a flabby Hail Mary pass 3 weeks after the Super Bowl's over. So today, we revisit the fruitless testimony of two more fading star witnesses who have failed to testify to any presidential wrongdoing, much less evidence of high crimes and misdemeanors. Both of the majority witnesses are frustrated would-be business partners of Hunter Biden, who tried to leverage the Biden name, or the Biden brand, as they keep calling it. But they never got any business off the ground for reasons that will become painfully obvious to anyone watching the proceedings today. Even Hunter Biden, laboring at the time under a serious substance abuse addiction, could tell these were not the type of people he should be doing business with. So rather than representing the Biden brand, which was their ardent wish, they now show up today as loyal servants of Trump world, each of them proudly represented by their very own former Trump White House attorney. The first is Mr. Bobulinski, the bitterly disappointed wannabe Hunter business partner whose famously litigious history includes unsuccessfully suing his own dying father's charity for nearly $1 million, and just last month suing Cassidy Hutchinson for $10 million after she reported that Mr. Bobulinski, wearing a ski mask, met with Mark Meadows, which Ms. Hutchinson is now backed up with actual documentary photographic evidence, something in very short supply in this investigation. Mr. Bobulinski made his hazy allegations against the Bidens public for the first time at a press conference choreographed by the Trump for President campaign, which provided him a venue, a gaggle of journalists, and even a dress shirt that they went out and bought for him to wear to the event. Hours later, Mr. Bobulinski joined the second 2020 presidential debate as Donald Trump's personal guest, where he was seated with Kid Rock and Mark Meadows. The other star witness, Mr. Galanis, who I believe is appearing by Zoom today, is a serial fraudster and convicted con man, a term I would charitably not use on a witness, except it was explicitly bestowed upon him by not one, but two different U.S. federal district court judges, including the one who sentenced him to over 15 years in prison for defrauding union pension funds, a Native American tribe, and scores of innocent investors. Mr. Galanis was sentenced to pay restitution of over $80 million to his victims. That's a lot of money. That's what Donald Trump was sentenced to pay E. Jean Carroll for in that civil litigation. The very first record of Mr. Galanis' claims against the Biden family appeared, check this out, in the clemency petition that he sent from prison to President Trump. But the key point is this: even if we were to believe every single word offered by these utterly compromised and biased witnesses, Mr. Bobulinski and Mr. Galanis, their allegations don't identify any wrongdoing, much less an impeachable offense by President Biden. With the impeachment bus running on empty, our GO colleagues now are apparently preparing to save face by ending the impeachment farce with criminal referrals. But criminal referrals require evidence of crimes. And the only crimes we have seen are those of the GOP's own star witnesses, like Russian asset Alex Smirnoff, Chinese agent Gal Luft, Devin Archer, and Jason Galanis. The minority witness today, our witness, Lev Parnas, casts a piercing light on what's really taking place here. And Mr. Parnas has reason to know. He, too, used to be a mega sycophant peddling lies and disinformation to smear Joe Biden. Today, he joins a long line of self-exiles from Trump world who could no longer stomach all the corruption and deceit. People like Cassidy Hutchinson, people like Michael Cohen, Sarah Matthews, Alyssa Griffin, General James Mattis, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, General John Kelly, and now Vice President Mike Pence, who refuses to endorse for president the man he served with. But we do have loyal sycophants still in the room, and one day I look forward to hearing their testimony about how they got sunk into this religious cult. Mr. Parnas wrote Chairman Comer and me a remarkable letter on July 23rd, 2023. This is the first time I'm meeting him today. He was Rudy Giuliani's right-hand man, his globe-trotting business partner and language interpreter in the mission to manufacture Ukraine and Burisma-related dirt and smears against Joe Biden in 2018 and 2019. He spent all of his time traveling around the world trying to stage evidence against Joe Biden. In his letter, Parnas explains that the desperate search to find evidence of any kind of Biden corruption was a complete and total bust because there was no evidence to find. He wrote to tell us that not only is there no evidence in Ukraine that Joe Biden did anything improper, but more darkly, the manic search for a smoking gun against Biden became a mission to invent and concoct evidence out of thin air with the active help of Russian intelligence assets and agents. A man, I'm getting to Russia. You haven't heard anything yet, Mr. Chairman. A man who has reckoned with his own moral descent into Trump world. Lev Parnas is ashamed of what he did to serve the interests of Russian propaganda and Putin's lies. And he wants America to know the truth. He can explain how the Russian-stimulated conspiracy theories and lies that he promoted with Rudy Giuliani live on in the tiresome fabrication spread by Alex Smirnoff and now repeated by this committee like Pavlov's dog. At every turn, my colleagues cry Russia hoax, even in the face of repeated warnings from Donald Trump's own Treasury Secretary and Secretary of State, from the intelligence community, from Robert Mueller, and most recently from Special Counsel Weiss, who was named to office by Donald Trump. As Secretary Mnuchin stated, quote, Russian disinformation campaigns targeting American citizens are a threat to our democracy. That's Secretary Mnuchin, someone that you guys usually defend, but my GOP colleagues continue to cry Russia hoax like cult members selling flowers at the airport. Our colleagues are the ones loyally amplifying the actual Russian hoax, not the Russia hoax, the Russian hoax, the one that Giuliani and Trump and Smirnoff have eagerly adopted from Putin and his agents. They participate in this hoax while they shamefully block $60 billion in military assistance to President Zelensky and the besieged Ukrainian people, 5 years after Trump and Giuliani tried to shake President Zelensky down for counterfeit dirt on Joe Biden. And while they continue to parrot these transparent Russian lies, Vladimir Putin wages his bloody aggressive war on Ukraine filled with atrocities like the mass kidnapping of children and the rape and slaughter of civilians. The MAGA right's wholesale adoption of this Russian hoax and their sellout of the Ukrainian people by the MAGA right is an historic betrayal of democracy, freedom, and the rule of law. But the defense of democracy begins with fidelity to the truth and the oversight Democrats, America's truth squad against this disinformation, is here today to set the record straight. I yield back to you, Mr. Chairman.
I would now like to introduce our witnesses. Mr. Tony Bobulinski. Mr. Bobulinski was a business partner of Hunter Biden in a joint venture between a Chinese energy entity, CEFC. Mr. Bobulinski sat for a transcribed interview with the committee on February 13th, 2024. Mr. Lev Parnas. Mr. Parnas was not a business associate of the Biden family. Mr. Parnas is an entrepreneur, a political activist, and an author. And Mr. Jason Galanis. Mr. Galanis was a business partner of Hunter Biden. Mr. Galanis sat for a transcribed interview with this committee on February 23, 2024. We asked the Bureau of Prisons to make him available in person today. They would only provide Mr. Galanis for virtual testimony. Notably, Mr. Galanis applied for CARES Act home confinement, and after a lengthy approval process, was approved for home confinement on June 9, 2023. On June 12, 2023, I issued a subpoena to Devin Archer for testimony. On the following day, June 13, 2023, Mr. Galanis' approval was reversed as a result of Department of Justice's intervention. So Mr. Galanis has remained in a federal prison facility. He is currently in Montgomery, Alabama. Mr. Galanis, can you please state for the record who else is in the room with you?
Yes, Chairman Coleman. My counsel and advisor, Mark Paletta, and Nicholas Wise.
Thank you. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please stand and raise their right hands. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that the witnesses all answered in the affirmative. Thank you. You all may be seated. We appreciate you all being here today and look forward to your testimony. Let me remind the witnesses that we have read your written statements and they will appear in full in the hearing record. Please limit your oral statements to 5 minutes. As a reminder, please press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it is on and members can hear you. When you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, the light will turn yellow. And when the red light comes on, your 5 minutes is expired, and we would ask that you would please wrap it up as quickly as possible. I now recognize Mr. Bobulinski for his opening statement.
Should I allow Hunter to give his opening statement first?
Doesn't appear Mr. Biden showed up for his public hearing, so we'll recognize you, Mr. Bobulinski.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, ranking members, and members of Congress, good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you and present my truthful testimony to the American people. I sit here today under oath for one reason and one reason only. The American people deserve to hear the truth. Though the truth involving the deep corruption of the Biden family, including the malfeasance of the sitting president of the United States, might be raw and unpleasant, the American people must hear it. You're presented here today with two narratives in this investigation. A false one being pushed by Joe Biden, a serial liar and fabulous, now under this impeachment investigation for public corruption. His brother, Jim Biden, a 75-year-old man who can't keep his lies straight, including under oath. And his son, Hunter Biden, a chronic drug addict facing 2 indictments with 12 counts. You also have before you the truth, confirmed by multiple Biden family business partners over many years and backed up by mountains of irrefutable evidence, including text messages, emails, documents, recordings. I am the only Biden family business partner with an impeccable military record. I'm grateful that this country has given me the freedom to be successful. I worked hard to become independently wealthy. I've taken several businesses public, sold multiple businesses to some of the world's best private equity firms. In fact, my business success is why they sought me out. However, what they have done is repugnant to me. I am here today because I'm a patriot and I'm a truth teller. We keep hearing from certain corners that our democracy is at risk and democracy is on the ballot in 24. Yet the same people preaching this mantra know better. They continue to lie directly to the American people without hesitation and remorse. Rep. Dan Goldman and Jamie Raskin, both lawyers, and Mr. Goldman, a former prosecutor with the SDNY from New York, will continue to lie today in this hearing and then go straight to the media to tell more lies. Hunter Biden's defense attorney, Abby Lowell, weaponizes letters to Congress to try to smear my name
Mr. Chairman.
misstate the cold hard facts
Mr. Chairman.
in an attempt to save his powerfully connected client and his father. I challenge Mr. Lowell to make those claims on national television so he can be held accountable for his lies. Prior to my successful business career, I was an officer in the United States Navy. At Navy's elite Naval Nuclear Power Training Command, I later served as the command's chief technology officer.
Please proceed. I apologize for the disruption from the.
Okay. Am I supposed to say it's my time, Mr. Raskin?
Yeah. But please, Mr. Bobulinski, please
Okay.
come to order. Mr. Bobulinski, please proceed.
Okay.
Please proceed. I apologize for the disruption from the minority.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, save his time, but he called members of this committee liars, and I just want to know whether the order and decorum requirements of House Rule 11 apply to witnesses appearing before the committee.
All right.
Does it apply or does it not?
Should I address? I don't.
There's decorum from the members. We've asked for that. There's no language that I'm aware of pertaining to a witness.
Thank you.
So don't make sure we didn't waste any of his time on the opening statement. Mr. Bobulinski, I'm sorry for the disruption. Please continue your opening statement.
I think you, Mr. Raskin, used.
We'll make sure it's right. We'll make sure.
Okay, great. I just want to restate, make sure the American people hear all these facts. Abby Lowell weaponizes letters to Congress to try to smear my name and misstate the cold hard facts in an attempt to save his powerfully connected client and his father. I challenge Mr. Lowell to make those claims on national television so he can be held accountable for his lies. Prior to my successful business career, I was an officer for over 6 years in the United States Navy's elite Naval Nuclear Power Training Command as a decorated master training specialist. I later served as the commander's chief technology officer, where I held a huge security clearance from the Department of Energy and the NSA. When I left Nuclear Power Training Command, I was the #1 ranked direct input officer in the entire command. And then I jumped into the business world and public markets. While I have made a few contributions over the years to Democrats, such as Representative Ro Khanna, I don't see him, but I hope he shows up today. He sits on the Democratic side of the Oversight Committee. I'm not a political person. I come from a family with a long history of distinguished service in our nation's military, including my father, both of my grandfathers, and my brother, all of whom were willing to sacrifice their lives for this great country. My sister serves our military vets for 2 decades at the Veterans Administration. We've lived our life as a family in service to this great country. I hope the American people will pay close attention to this hearing. I also hope they will understand that some members of this committee will engage in absurd attacks and efforts to try to deflect attention from the facts. And I will present today by questioning my integrity and my patriotic duty. You may see me speak passionately at this hearing, but for good reason. Not only was I willing to die for this country, every single male member of my immediate family was willing to die for this country. I want to be crystal clear. From my direct personal experience and what I've subsequently come to learn, it is clear to me that Joe Biden was the brand being sold by the Biden family. His family's foreign influence peddling operation from China to Ukraine and elsewhere sold out to foreign actors who are seeking to gain influence and access to Joe Biden and the United States government. Joe Biden was more than a participant in and a beneficiary of his family's business. He was an active, aware enabler who met with business associates such as myself to further the business, despite being buffered by a complex scheme to maintain plausible deniability. I ask this big question. If there's no evidence of corruption here today, if Joe's conduct and the conduct of his family were fully legal and proper, then why are they so dishonest about it? Not just slight misrepresentations of fact, but deep untruths about the entire corrupt enterprise. Hunter Biden gave his transcribed interview on February 28th and lied throughout his testimony. Here's just one egregious example of Hunter's perjury. He lied to the committee on important details concerning his money demands and threats to CFC in text messages on July 30th and 31st, 2017. He leveraged his father's presence next to him in that infamous text to strong-arm CFC to paying Hunter immediately. Jim Biden also lied extensively throughout his transcribed interview on February 21st and perjured himself. An example of that, on page 100 of his transcript, Jim is asked specifically, do you recall having a meeting with Hunter Biden, Tony Bobulinski, and Joe Biden? Jim's response, absolutely not. The committee was so shocked by his perjury that they asked him the same question multiple times, Each time he denied meeting with me and Joe Biden. After the committee showed him text messages confirming that I met with Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, and Jim Biden at the Beverly Hilton in May 2017, Jim Biden, with a former U.S. attorney lawyer sitting next to him, still denied that meeting took place. Hunter Biden, in his own transcribed interview, confirmed that that meeting took place. Hunter confirmed his uncle perjured himself in front of this committee. I'm simply here to tell the truth to the American people, and I hope each and every one of you, congressmen and women, give me the opportunity to do that instead of focusing on Russia or smearing my family's name or focusing on facts that are irrelevant today. I yield back.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, parliamentary inquiry?
Yes.
Just 2 points. One is, I believe Mr. Bobulinski went over 2 minutes, 14 seconds. I hope the same courtesy will be
We will give Mr. Parnas equal time.
Thank you. And secondly, I see that we now have a witness appearing remotely, and I thought that witnesses were required to appear in person under the rules adopted by the majority at the beginning of the Congress. And do we have a new practice with respect to that rule? Because I know that members on our side were denied the ability to participate in hearings that were conducted in Florida and Mississippi and Alabama. We wanted to participate by Zoom. So I hope...
And I'll answer that. It requires, to be able to testify remotely, requires a letter from me and an approval from the majority leader, which we have. And I'll enter that letter into the record without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope we'll extend the same courtesy to members of this committee when they can't get to a hearing as in Mississippi or Florida. Thank you much.
Mr. Chairman, parliamentary inquiry.
State your point.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Bobulinski just referred to text messages that I believe he is referring to photos of a BlackBerry.
What's your parliamentary inquiry? State your parliamentary inquiry, because we've got a very important hearing here, and we don't have time for stunts. What's your parliamentary inquiry?
It's not a stunt. It's I'm simply asking that Mr. Bobulinski.
You don't have a parliamentary inquiry. Chair now recognizes Mr. Parnas for equal time.
Mr. Chairman,
Chair recognizes Mr. Parnas.
Does the committee have the text messages that Mr. Bobulinski?
Mr. Chairman, we don't have time for games by Democrats today.
We have important witnesses here. This is a credible...
I'm asking a question about the important
You asked for a parliamentary inquiry. You will have 5 minutes whenever Jamie Raskins tells me it's your time to speak. Mr. Parnas, the chair recognizes you for equal time that Mr. Bobulinski had, which was 7 minutes.
Thank you. Hello. Honorable members of Congress, Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Raskin, and members of the Oversight Committee. I am humbled and thankful before you to show up before you today. I came to the United States from Odessa, Ukraine in 1976 when it was still the former Soviet Union. My mother and father and sister and I had left the Soviet Union, escaping anti-Semitism and persecution. While in Rome en route to Israel, my sister and I won the most important opportunity that we have ever been given. We won a U.S. green card lottery. My family came here with literally no more than shirts on our back and the hopes of rebuilding our lives in the land of freedom. I say this to you because I love this country. From shortly after my arrest on October 9, 2019 to now, I have been trying to share the irrefutable truth with you. The American people have been lied to by Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and various cohorts of individuals in government and media positions. They created falsehoods to serve their own interests, knowing it would undermine the strength of our nation. From November 2018 to October 2019, I was a key participant and a witness to numerous efforts to prove that Joe and Hunter Biden were linked to corruption in Ukraine. Rudy Giuliani, on behalf of then President Donald Trump, tasked me with a mission to travel the globe, finding dirt on the Bidens so that an array of networks could spread misinformation about them, thus securing the 2020 election for Donald J. Trump. Ironically, when I was arrested, my original indictment linked me to an individual referred to as unindicted co-conspirator 1. We now know this individual to be Congressman Pete Sessions, who sits on this very committee today. Today, I ask you to consider the following. In nearly a year traveling the world and interviewing officials in different countries, I found precisely zero evidence of the Biden's corruption in Ukraine. No credible source has ever provided proof of criminal activity, not the FBI, CIA, nor the NSA. No respectable Ukrainian official has ever said that the Bidens did anything illegal, including former President Poroshenko and former Prosecutor General Yuri Lutsenko. Even when CEO of Burisma, Mykola Zlochevsky, was offered a deal by Rudy Giuliani in exchange for information on the Bidens, he provided none, because there is none. The only information ever pushed on the Bidens in Ukraine has come from one source, and one source only: Russia and Russian agents. The impeachment proceedings that bring us here now are predicated on false information spread by the Kremlin. Everyone involved knew they were sharing lies. From Trump and Giuliani's shadow diplomacy, through my missions to Ukraine and elsewhere, to members of a BLT team, a group convened for the sole purpose of investigating and damaging the Bidens. Everything was for the ultimate benefit of Donald Trump and thereby Vladimir Putin. Because the team's investigations were centered around Biden and Ukraine, I was designated the point person in every matter they pursued. That is how I know with certainty that these Biden stories are untrue then and are untrue now. Congressman Pete Sessions, then Congressman Devin Nunes, Senator Ron Johnson, and many others understood they were pushing a false narrative. The same goes for John Solomon, Sean Hannity, and media personnel, particularly at Fox News, who used this narrative to manipulate the public ahead of the 2020 elections. Sadly, they are still doing this today as we approach the 2024 elections. We cannot separate this conspiracy from the Russian-Ukraine war because Trump has no intention to keep aiding Ukraine. Without the support of the United States and NATO, millions in Ukraine will suffer and die. If we allow Russia to defeat Ukraine, eventually that suffering will reach American shores. Today, I admit my own wrongdoings. I have been a convicted federal election campaign and fraud crimes and served my sentence. I do not hide that from reality. It is part of my truth. Despite rigorous attempts by those in power to silence me, I will be silenced no longer. Thank you to the committee for allowing me to speak. I look forward to answering any and all of your questions.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes Mr. Galanis for his opening statement.
Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Raskin, and members of the committee, my name is Jason Galanis. I was a business partner of Hunter Biden and Devin Archer, among others, during the years of 2014-2015. Our business included the acquisition of 85-year-old Wall Street firm Burnham & Company, the $1.5 billion surviving division of Drexel Burnham Lambert. Our objective was to build a diversified private equity platform, which would be anchored by globally known Wall Street brand together with a globally known political name, Biden. Our goal, that is Hunter Biden, Devin Archer, and me, was to make billions, not millions. The entire value add of Hunter Biden to our business was his family name and his access to his father, Vice President Joe Biden. In 2014, we believed that the Burnham enterprise would be significantly enhanced by forming a partnership with Harvest Fund Management, a $300 billion Chinese financial service company closely connected to the Chinese Communist Party. This effort was led by Hunter Biden's contact with Henry Zhao, the Harvest chairman. Mr. Zhao was interested in this partnership because of the game-changing value add of the Biden family, including Joe Biden, who was to be a member of the Burnham Harvest team post-vice presidency. My lawyers provided the committee a drafted email dated August 23, 2014, drafted for Hunter Biden that reflects this understanding. It states, and I quote, "Michael, please also remind Henry Zhao of our conversation about a board seat for a certain relation of mine. Devin and I golfed with that relation earlier this week, and we discussed this very idea. And as always, he remains very, very keen on the opportunity," end quote. I'm certain that this phrase, a certain relation of mine, refers to Vice President Biden. Devin told me about this golf course conversation shortly after it happened. Ultimately, this paragraph was deleted from the final version, with Hunter following our general rule of thumb on business deals: say it, forget it, write it, regret it. Further to that, I recall being with Hunter Biden and Devin Archer at the Peninsula Bar in New York, where Hunter took a call from his father and told him things were going well with Henry Zhao and Harvest, and that he might need a little help getting across the finish line. it was not the only time I heard Hunter speak with his father for business reasons. I was present when Hunter called his father on May 4th, 2014 on a cell phone, put it on speaker mode to have him say hello to Yelena Baturina, a Russian oligarch and an investor in Rosemont projects, and her husband, Yuri Luzkov, the former mayor of Moscow. Devin Archer was also there. Hunter said, quote, I'm here with our friends. I told you we're coming to town, and we wanted to say hello. The vice president said hello, some pleasantries, and then hope you had safe travels, and then said, quote, okay, you be good to my boy. Hunter responded by saying, everything is good, and we are moving ahead. The vice president said something about, quote, being helpful, and Hunter ended the call by saying he was going to call his father later. Before this call, Hunter sat next to Yelena Baturina at a table, and I heard him speaking on business matters generally. A few days after this May 4th party, an email my lawyer provided to this committee shows that Devin had confirmed Ms. Baturina was committed to a, quote, hard order of $10 to $20 million in a burden investment banking client. In an effort to build this financial platform, I engaged in unlawful conduct. Our companies were entrusted with $11 billion of union pension fund money, whose trust I betrayed. I pleaded guilty. I've had 8 years in federal custody to reflect on my actions. I'm profoundly sorry for committing these crimes. I deserve the lengthy sentence I received. Nevertheless, as I set out more fully in my full statement, I believe the SDNY prosecutors did not indict Hunter Biden on the same deal for political reasons, despite then available documentation that we were partners, were involved in decision-making that involved illegal self-dealing, and all of us had financially benefited from these schemes. In fact, Hunter Biden and Devin Archer's company, Rosemont Seneca Bohai, received $15 million from the tribal bonds fraudulent scheme to be invested in the Burnham Group. I've offered to supply this information to the government about Hunter Biden's crimes, but the prosecutors have been uninterested. And my request for commutation I filed in DOJ in December 2020 did provide information about Hunter's culpability. The DOJ has retaliated against me and vigorously objected to my being placed in home confinement pursuant to the CARES Act. I applied for home confinement on February 4th, 2023, and I was approved on June 9th. On June 12th, this committee issued a subpoena for Devin Archer, and the BOP reversed my approval on June 13th, with the SDNY prosecutors strongly objecting to my release. I've been appealing this reversal, and with each stage, the BOP reason for my denial has changed. During this period, the period beginning in January 2023, I was sexually assaulted by a member of the prison staff at FPC Pensacola. He persisted in sexually harassing me for many months thereafter. I had hoped to receive home confinement, which would remove me from danger. My judgment was clouded by the shame I felt for not being able to prevent the attacks. I was well aware, as inmates, all inmates are, that the Bureau of Prisons had a horrible record on these matters. I believe my disclosure would have made things worse for me. Unfortunately, the sexual harassment continued until early August, when the prison correctional officer's comments became more threatening. I feared for my safety. I decided to seek counseling from Chaplain Dixon the next day, on August 10, 2023. The chaplain was visibly upset by the events and asked to bring in Warden Salisbury, who quickly opened a PREA investigation, which is a reference to the Prison Rape Elimination Act passed by Congress. After further debriefings, I was immediately escorted to a vehicle and driven by senior staff hours to FPC Montgomery, a separate facility. I'm grateful the committee has opened up an investigation of these matters, and I appreciate Chairman Jordan and Comer and Subcommittee Chairman Biggs signing the letter. I believe I've been a victim of a pattern of retribution by the Department of Justice. I believe I'm putting myself at grave risk within the BOP for providing information on these matters concerning the president and his son. I've been treated professionally at Montgomery. I want to thank Case Manager Coordinator Anthony Barnes and Warden Randy Keys for their help in facilitating access to my attorney prior to this interview.
Thank you, Mr. Galanis, and I want to thank all the witnesses again for being here today. We will now begin the questions, and I want to remind members on both sides of the aisle, each member has 5 minutes. I'm going to adhere to that and hit the gavel. If the question has been asked, then we'll allow the witnesses time to respond, but we are going to try to get in a lot of questions from a lot of members, and I will begin the questioning, followed by Ranking Member Raskins. Again, Mr. Bobulinski, thank you for your service to our country, your military service. Appreciate you being here. During the 118th Congress, this committee has investigated Joe Biden's involvement in his family's influence peddling schemes around the world. So let's start with that. Mr. Bobulinski, was Joe Biden involved with any of your business dealings with Hunter Biden and James Biden? Was Joe Biden involved in his family's attempts to sell their access to him? You set out a form to form a legitimate business. You set out to form a legitimate business with the Bidens. Did you come to find out that the Biden family had no interest in doing real business?
I did.
Mr. Galanis, are you aware of any times Hunter Biden used Joe Biden with Joe Biden's knowledge to benefit their business associates?
Yes.
Which business associates?
Yelena Baturina, Russian oligarch, testified about. Russian, Chinese, Chinese fund manager, Henry Zhao, and Nikolai Zlochevsky, a Ukrainian oligarch, oil and gas oligarch.
Okay. Now that we've established that Joe Biden was involved in his family's business dealings, I'd like to turn to the financial records we've subpoenaed. One major point my Democrat colleagues downplay is how much money the Bidens accumulated from foreign business ventures in such a short period of time. We have over $24 million to the Biden family and their business associates from 2014, while Joe Biden was vice president, to 2019. Mr. Bobulinski, there came a time when you were attempting to raise $10 million from the Chinese to pursue an actual business deal, a real business deal. But it wouldn't be correct to say this was a $10 million deal, would it? What did the Bidens conceive of the business with the Chinese becoming?
The Chinese were committing to deploying billions of dollars in infrastructure projects here in the United States as well as around the world.
Mr. Galanis, what was the financial goal you, Mr. Archer, and Hunter Biden set out to achieve? Was it millions of dollars or billions of dollars?
Billions of dollars.
Billions with a B.
Yes, billions.
Now I'd like to turn to some of the statements Joe Biden has made during his presidency about the findings of this investigation. Mr. Bobulinski, Joe Biden has said he never interacted with his family's business associates. Did he meet with you?
He did.
In fact, are you aware that Joe Biden also met with...
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. He did multiple times.
Okay. Are you aware that Joe Biden also met with Rob Walker, Eric Sherwin, and Devin Archer, too?
I'm generally aware of it.
Mr. Galanis, as you discussed earlier regarding Yelena Baturina, the Russian oligarch, you were present for Hunter Biden calling his then Vice President father with the Russian oligarch, Yelena Baturina. Present, correct?
That's correct.
You also were present for Hunter Biden's conversation with his father about a board seat on a Chinese company board. Is that correct?
I was present for a call when Chinese transactions discussed, yes.
So, Mr. Galanis, isn't it true that when Joe Biden said he didn't interact with his family's business associates, that's not true, is it?
I believe it would be misleading to the point of being an untruth.
I want to touch on the fact about the absent seat in the middle. Hunter Biden has chosen not to attend today's proceedings. I've given Mr. Biden exactly what he asked for before his deposition. It's clear that Hunter Biden knows his testimony would not withstand public scrutiny. Joe Biden has not been truthful about his participation in schemes to sell access and influence. And today's witnesses will show the American people a side of the story that the president and his allies on this side of the aisle are eager to hide. Mr. Bobulinski, can you tell us about your meeting at the Beverly Hilton with Joe Biden?
The short version or long version?
Long version, but within a minute.
Okay. So Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, and Joe Biden were in Los Angeles for a variety of business discussions. Joe was there to speak at the Milken Conference in May of 2017. I had lunch with Hunter Biden at the Chateau Marmont, and he had asked me to meet with his father that night. He set up a meeting at the Beverly Hilton where they hold the Milken Conference. And I got there a bit early and sat with Jim Biden, Hunter Biden, and we're just talking about what we were doing with the Chinese and the legal documents I was working through. And they had sort of coached me before Joe showed up to, listen, we're going to just keep things at a very high level. We're not going to go into a lot of details in this meeting. And I just remember that discussion generally because it just struck me as odd, honestly. Joe wasn't in the White House then, and that they were sort of framing it that way. And then Joe showed up, walked through the lobby of the Beverly Hilton Hotel. I stood up to shake his hand, and we sat down and spent 45 minutes to an hour going through my background.
You met with him that long?
Yes. This wasn't a handshake, a 2-second discussion about the weather. This was a 45-minute long meeting to an hour where we talked about a lot of stuff.
Very good. Thank you. Chair now recognizes Ranking Member Raskin for his questions.
But we're actually going to go to Mr. Garcia to begin.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you again. I just want to, just for the record, be very clear that in Mr. Bobulinski's testimony, he has provided zero evidence of any sort of link between Hunter Biden and the president as far as it relates to the business dealings. And so once again, we're back to a hearing where no evidence is being provided of any sort of wrongdoing by the president. But I want to go back,
that's
Mr.
blatant lie.
Bobulinski. Actually, it's my time, sir. Mr. Bobulinski, I want to go back to the private deposition that we had. I was one of a handful of Democrats in that private, on the record, under oath conversation we had. And during that deposition, I asked you a question of which you gave a false answer to, and I want to go back to that. I asked you specifically who got you into the presidential debate that was attended by you and others, and that, of course, was a huge moment in that campaign, and you could not recall. In fact, you said, quote, "I do not recall who got me into the debate." Do you remember telling me that, sir?
You were playing semantics, trying to ask me as if somebody called me directly and gave me a ticket, like
sir,
I was going to a movie.
Sir, I asked you. I
told you
I'm going to reclaim my time, sir. I'm going to reclaim my time. What I said was,
just ask me a question, Mr.
I'm reclaiming my time. Thank you, sir. What I asked you was, do you recall who actually got you into the presidential debate? You actually said, quote, "I do not recall who got me into the debate." You did not remember who got you into the debate between President Biden and between Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
That's not a true statement.
Sir, you quoted, "I don't recall who got me into the debate." It's on page 102 of the transcript.
You did not ask me whether I was a guest of Mr. Biden.
Thank you. I'll reclaim my time. I'm not asking you a question right now. Thank you very much, sir. In fact, here, as was shown by Ranking Member Raskin, we know that you were in the debate actually sitting adjacent and next to Trump officials. When we were confronted again on this same question, Mr. Bobulinski, if you were a guest of Mr. Trump's at the debate, you responded and you quoted, once the Wall Street Journal called you out, quote, "Is the Wall Street Journal God or something? Like you act like this is some encyclopedia of fact." And you refuse to still confirm that you were a guest of Donald Trump. So I want to ask you one more time, sir. Were you a guest of Donald Trump at the presidential debate?
Mr. Garcia, those were not the questions you asked me in my transcribed interview.
Wow.
You were trying to ask
answer the question, sir. Were you a guest of Donald Trump?
Of Donald Trump at the gate, or at the debate.
You were.
That was obvious to everyone in the world at that point.
Oh, it's interesting.
You were asking me semantic
Thank you, sir. So you were a guest? That you answered the question. Because at the time you said in the transcript, under oath, "I don't recall who got me into the debate." So just to be clear. So I want to keep going. So you also call yourself, you're not a political person, yet you went to a presidential debate on behalf of Donald Trump. I also want to make it clear that you made numerous claims and allegations. You've made them today, you've made them before. And yet, even though you're not a political person, this is also another photo of you. You actually chose to show up at a press conference for Donald Trump prior to the debate because you're not a political person. Did you show up to a press conference for Donald Trump before the debate?
I can't qualify whether it was for Donald Trump.
Do you know who invited you? Sir, who invited you to the debate? Donald Trump, you said. Who invited you to the press conference?
Who invited me to my lawyers coordinated things, and I showed up at a.
Well, sir, I will tell you, it was Jason Miller, who it's been very clear, it's been reported, who actually worked on the part of the Donald Trump campaign. Here you are at a Donald Trump press conference, and you can't remember how you got to the press conference. You refuse to answer how you actually got into the Donald Trump debate with Joe Biden. Do you remember speaking at the press conference?
I do very clearly.
You do. Do you know who Jason Miller is, sir?
I do know of him, yes.
Do you know that he was a Trump campaign staffer?
Mr. Garcia, you keep asking me semantical questions. You underestimate that I had 3 lawyers around me that were coordinating my travel, where I was going, and stuff like that.
Well, sir, interesting.
So please stop.
Well, I'll reclaim my time. Thank you very much. It's interesting, sir, because you show up to a pre-debate press conference. You show up to a presidential debate, both invited to by a person running for the presidency of the United States. You know the stakes are high, yet you have no idea how you got to the press conference. You don't remember how you got to the debate. And here you are speaking at a press conference of which the national media, so how did you get to this press conference?
I flew on a plane.
Who invited you?
Are we going in circles?
Sir, who invited you to the press conference?
My lawyers told me I was invited to come to Tennessee. At that point, I was trying to get the truth and the facts out to the American people. At that moment in time, if I recall, I believe 80 million people watched that debate. And that was probably the
Thank you, sir. I reclaim my time. Well, with that, I think it's very clear for someone that can't remember how I got to a Donald Trump press conference or a Donald Trump debate, you're completely an uncredible witness, sir. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair now recognizes Chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, Jason Smith, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've previously heard from 2 IRS whistleblowers that Joe Biden was the brand being sold by his family members. One such example of this could be seen in a June 6, 2017 WhatsApp message where Hunter Biden told a business associate that he was not willing to, quote, sign over my family's brand, close quote, or give them, quote, the keys to my family's only asset. Mr. Bobulinski, can you confirm that President Biden is the brand being sold by his family members? Thank you. During his deposition, Hunter Biden repeatedly testified under oath that his father was not involved in his business in any capacity, and that there wasn't even a connection between his father and his businesses. Here is just one example. Quote, I just state for the record one more time, under oath and under penalty of perjury, my father has never been involved in my business. I have never asked my father to be involved in my business. My father has never benefited from my business, and I have never asked anyone or my father to do anything for the benefit of anyone I've ever done business for, close quotes. Yet the Ways and Means Committee released a WhatsApp message that were provided by the IRS whistleblowers showing that Hunter Biden wrote on July 30th, 27, quote, I'm sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled. I'm sitting here waiting for the call with my father. Moreover, you testified that Hunter was not shy about his ability to get his father on the phone. And Devin Archer testified that there were multiple instances in which Hunter placed his dad on speakerphone. Mr. Bobulinski, was Hunter Biden telling the truth when he testified under oath that his father was never involved in any of his business dealings?
No, he was not. Those are all blatant lies.
We continue to hear claims that President Biden was not involved in his family's business dealings and that he did not benefit from illicit business deals. However, IRS Special Agent Joe Ziegler provided documents to the Ways and Means Committee, 327 emails, many of which involve Hunter Biden and Hunter Biden's business associates. Mr. Bobulinski, do you have any personal experience that leads you to believe that Joe Biden was involved with Hunter Biden's business associates and business dealings?
Yes, I do.
You want to say a few?
To outline how Joe was involved?
Yeah.
Yes, different congressmen and women keep trying to say that there's no evidence and use the word involved, which is a very opaque language. If Joe Biden was not involved in his son's business dealings, why, after flying all the way across the country to the Milken Conference, where there is next to Davos, is probably the biggest conference in the world, why would he take 45 minutes out of his night? It wasn't a 10 a.m. meeting. It was 10:40 in the evening He's an elderly man, flew all the way across country to sit with me for 45 minutes to an hour to discuss my background, the business we are doing with the Chinese, his family's background.
Speaking of the business with the Chinese, in October 2020, Joe Biden asserted that his family had not earned money through business dealings in China. However, IRS whistleblowers shared evidence that the Biden family made at least $1.1 million from their business with China, including $100,000 in payment from CFC, China Energy, and a $1 million payment in exchange for legal services that were never provided to a CFC official, Patrick Ho. Mr. Bobulinski, do you know whether the Biden family made any money from China?
They did, millions of dollars, I think approximately 8 to 9 million.
The Biden family has made millions of dollars from China, correct?
Correct.
And you said at least 9 million?
Yeah, I think it's actually over 10 million, but I'll leave those details up to you guys.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Parnas, for being here today. Your involvement with the real Russian hoax about Joe Biden began in 2018 when, as a big donor and a big supporter of Donald Trump's, you were introduced to Rudy Giuliani, and you began working with him to dig up dirt on Joe Biden, Ukraine. If you can just tell us quickly how you got involved in that.
Yes, I was a donor at the time. I became doing business with Rudy Giuliani. He got involved in a business I was doing called Fraud Guarantee. And in the midst, we started spending a lot of time together until eventually in November of 2018, he approached me and asked me about my connections in Ukraine. After telling him about people that I knew and things that I heard, at that point, then he wanted me to go to Ukraine to find Viktor Shokin, the prosecutor general.
And basically, he wanted to go from his fraud guarantee to guaranteeing a fraud on the American people. But after turning over every stone and going down every rabbit hole, including interviewing Viktor Shokin and Zlochevsky, the owner of Burisma, did you ever find the smoking gun or any evidence that Donald Trump was looking for to paste on Joe Biden?
On the contrary, Representative Raskin, not only did we keep hitting dead walls and not finding the smoking gun, but we kept running into sources of the information that was coming out of Russia.
In fact, Joe Biden was part of a global campaign, including by the United States, to oppose corruption and to go after the corrupt forces in Ukraine. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
At what point did the campaign to dig up dirt on Biden become a campaign to spread disinformation and lies about Biden?
At some point, when we hit a few brick walls, all of a sudden, then I saw the shift between the BLT group, which included John Solomon, the media personality, and Rudy Giuliani and other Trump lawyers, to start trying to push narratives that that were not validated. We had no way to validate them. Basically, a letter would come over from somebody in Ukraine. I'd hand it over to John Solomon. Next thing you knew, he was on Fox TV 2 hours later with Sean Hannity.
At what point did Mr. Giuliani begin working directly with Russian agents and Russian assets, individuals who would later become sanctioned by Donald Trump's own Treasury Department for spreading propaganda and disinformation against Joe Biden?
It was sometime in probably around May, June of 2019.
Were you aware, was Mr. Giuliani aware that these people were basically just doing the bidding of Vladimir Putin?
Absolutely.
So he had no hesitation about spreading lies that were concocted by Russian agents?
As long as it fit the narrative, absolutely not.
How were you and Giuliani able to take these false allegations peddled by corrupt officials and Russian agents and promote and amplify them here in the United States, in our political system? Weren't media groups skeptical of your claims?
Most media groups, I'd probably say all except for Fox and a few other right-wing media groups, didn't want to take any of the information, and that aggravated Rudy Giuliani and John Solomon and other players. And the main group that was being pushed through was Fox, Sean Hannity, and some other media personnel over there. But then there was also other people that were doing the bidding for the Russian people in Congress, like Senator Ron Johnson, like Congressman Pete Sessions that sits here right now, that was with me from the very beginning on this journey into finding of digging dirt on Joe Biden.
Is Putin's war on Ukraine today, which has cost hundreds of thousands of people's lives, is that part of the vaunted Russia hoax? Russia hoax?
Absolutely not.
Is it real?
Yes, absolutely.
I want to ask you a more personal question, if I might, Mr. Parnas, because in my several years living through this extraordinary period of American history, I've tried to ask people like Michael Cohen and Cassidy Hutchinson. I've wondered about people like General Milley, General Kelly. Why did you break with all of the deceit and corruption and lies of Donald Trump? How did you get out of that culture?
I mean, it was very difficult. I actually had to hit a brick wall myself and get